Thus, on March the 3rd, 1949, my father, Professor H.A. Brouwer, arrived in Bandung to start his work. He was appointed professor in Geodesy at the Facultas Teknik Universitas Indonesia. It was a radically new experience for him. He had been working in rebuilding the Netherlands since 1945 to help to restore the country from Second World War damage. There was a high demand for land surveyors, for the reconstruction of bridges, buildings, roads, and so on. First, he continued working for the mapping agency of the city of Rotterdam. Then he was summoned for military conscription. He was stationed as commander of a triangulation service of the artillery measuring regiment. In the meantime, he was also active in a number of commissions, among which was a commission set up by Professor Schermerhorn. Schermerhorn was prime minister just after the war for 1 year, but now concerned himself with promoting the cooperation of institutions active in geodesy. In 1948, a program for geodetic engineers was set up at the Technical College in Delft. My father was aware of the program and must have enjoyed the discussions there, especially with his surveyor friends and colleagues. Around that time, talks began of the same time of program to be introduced to the TH in Bandung. There they experienced the same situation as the Netherlands after the war, rebuilding the country. There was a high demand for well-educated land surveyors. And I think that already at that time, some people might have realized that the political philosophy from the Netherlands should be that Indonesia wanted to be self-sufficient. An education for geodetic engineers in Bandung, an important city in Indonesia, was a very rational move. Plans were formed, my father was still living in the Netherlands. And the question is, what moved him to go to work in Bandung? And this is where I think the connections with Professor Schermerhorn played an important role. After my father, Pak Brouwer, graduated in 1932, he quickly got a job as civil land surveyor. Schermerhorn, at that time already professor in Delft, was the one who hired him. Also, it was Schermerhorn who introduced photogrammetry in the Netherlands and extended the practical use of the technique of aerial survey all over the world. By the way, in 1950, he established the ITC of aerial survey in Delft. Pak Brouwer was from the very beginning interested in and involved with the developments of the technique of aerial surveying. Also, during his career in the Netherlands, my dad, highly regarded by Schermerhorn, frequently collaborated with him on projects. Furthermore, I think Professor Schermerhorn was also the one who sparked my dad's interest in the Indonesian project. Probably at that time, Pak Brouwer was at a crossroad in his life. And then he was handed the opportunity to provide the educational program for surveying and photogrammetry in Indonesia. It was a big decision, but the pioneer in my dad, took this opportunity. It was a great way to pass down his passion for aerial mapping, and I think it was the best decision in his professional career. His primary academic work? Well, I think that there were two periods in academic work. In the beginning, he must have spent a lot of time with deliberations and meetings to develop the program and to set up the organization. So many discussions with cadastre and the topographic services took place. But he had also to secure the correct equipment for the study, and to secure places where to give the lectures and to practice with the instruments. The main challenge at the time was to gather the right staff for the program, especially in field work. The appointment of Professor Wongso Chitro, first as lecturer and later in 1952 as professor in geodesy, was a big step in this challenge. The second period was about continuity. It was clear that the program should be sufficiently handed off to a fully Indonesian staff. Professor Brouwer played a big role in this process. He was a very respectful man. He made people feel valued and knew how to motivate and lead people to do the right work while keeping a low profile. This characteristic of his was key for a successful transfer of management. He did a great job. Prof. Brouwer was very happy to be in Indonesia. He enjoyed teaching and working with students. He was a dedicated surveyor and liked to carry over his passion. The new developments in aerial survey was something quite close to his heart, and he loved teaching this. He was great in stimulating people to work, collaborate, and get organized. Together with his great sense of humor, it made him a very likable man. What did I think of his decision? Well, I was 6 when we moved, and of course just went along. But later, from inside, I still feel privileged to have had the experience. I remember my youth in Indonesia was amazing. Going to a school almost in the open air, going swimming with family and friends, cycling, and meeting with people of all sorts of backgrounds, and of course countless other things. It enriched me as a person. His choice to move to Indonesia was not solely professional. He wanted his family to share the experience. My dad already made a move to Indonesia in 1949, but due to circumstances beyond control, we followed not until May 1950, so it took a long time for us to be together again. Of course, he carefully discussed the move to Indonesia with his wife, Ibu Brouwer, how to set about life in Indonesia, where me and my little brothers would go to school. I found many writings of my mom's extensive preparation for the trip, like Indonesian words to practice or Indonesian recipes to know what it was about. She was quite serious about this. But I was never very involved in my dad's professional career. This was just not really something we ever discussed. Of course, he shared his experience with my mother, Ibu Brouwer. I remember the patio in front of the house had plekje, where each evening they reflected on the events of the day. But it was just something that they shared with us as kids, which was a very common thing at that time. I met my father's students very few times during my youth in Indonesia. One of the students was an amateur photographer. He made some very nice pictures of us kids. And when I visited Indonesia again in 1975 and 76, I met more former students. They were great people, and many of them made serious careers. The trip was my parents' initiative, and for me it was very, very special to have that experience. Those students and the fact that the ITB department of Geodesy in Bandung still was active are great indicators of the impact Professor Brouwer had during the short time he was in Indonesia. Because, remember, he only worked short-term contracts, twice 3 years. The first from 1949 to 1942 and the second from 1942 to 1955. And with eye on secondary education for the kids, my parents decided not to extend the contract in 1955. There might have been other considerations, but there is no writing on that. What I do remember is the fantastic goodbye party that was given in honor of Professor Brouwer, and we got to be there as a family. It made a big impression on me then, but only later I found out how valued he and his work has been in Bandung. Looked forward to return to Holland? Well, on the one hand, I think my parents looked forward to meet with our family again, parents, brothers, sisters and their family. And I was really excited at that time to return to the Netherlands because I should join the secondary school which my dad had arranged from Indonesia. On the other hand, the goodbye was quite permanent. So when my father was working in Bandung again in 1975 and my parents lived there, I was very happy to revisit the place. As to what made him decide to go back in 1975. Right after his retirement in 1975, he was asked to go back to the ITB for several projects. He eagerly took the opportunity with both hands, also because of the opportunity to visit old friends and colleagues, for instance, Professor and Mrs. Sutejo. Professor Brouwer's job at the RTC of Aerial Survey in Delft helped him to keep close contact with Bandung throughout the years. So he must have had knowledge of the situation in Bandung and how he could work together to solve problems. My parents also used the second stay in Indonesia to travel around and rediscover the beautiful country of Indonesia. They invited their kids and friends along with them to share this passion they had for the country, because they really did. It is this appreciation and understanding my father had for people and places that makes him so special. And he also poured his passion into your program, which is still noticeable till this day.
Selamat pagi, selamat siang, selamat malam. I am Hans Brouwer, middle son of Professor Brouwer. I like to add some information to the video speech of my sister about the 1975 period of my father in Bandung. But first, I like to tell you that our family is pleased and honored that you pay attention to the work of my father. It was an unexpected but fruitful visit my son Jaap Brouwer paid to you in April 2016 with his wife and at that time unborn daughter, our third granddaughter. My father was asked by the Directorate International Technical Assistance of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands to be project manager of the ITC Aerial Survey Enschede on the project LTA-7A. The project had two aims: to assist on the photogrammetric department of the ITB and to establish a photogrammetric survey department at the Ministry of Public Works at Jakarta. Of course, the ITC was very much involved. As example, they sent employees as technical assistant to Bandung. As far as I know, my father was succeeded by Ingenieur H.L. van Gent of the Kadaster Apeldoorn during the period February-July 1976. The Dean of ITC, Professor Anton van der Welen, paid a working visit to Jakarta and Bandung. I added some photographs to the memory card I sent you. Well, success to you all and terima kasih banyak.
I'd like to thank you all in the Pendidikan Geodesy ITB for the opportunity to give this contribution to the festivities. And I thank my brother Hans and nephew Jaap and all the family for their help preparing this speech. And I thank Jan-Anne Kloosterbroer, my grandson, who is producing and is cameraman in this production. Selamat ulang tahun ke-70 pendidikan Geodesy ITB. Semoga semakin melahirkan tokoh besar Geodesy untuk Republik Indonesia dan tetap berkontribusi dalam pembangunan bangsa dan kesejahteraan rakyat Indonesia.
Mengenai Prof. Brouwer sendiri, kebetulan saya kan angkatan kelima, tahun 54. Beliau waktu itu sudah tidak jadi ketua bagian lagi, ketua departemen lagi, digantikan Prof. Jansen. Tapi satu hal yang saya ingat Prof. Brouwer pada saat itu, dia dekat dengan mahasiswa itu jelas. Dan saya waktu itu, tahun 55 itu kita ada upacara inaugurasi Prof. Jansen, di mana Prof. Brouwer yang mengatur semua. Itu mahasiswa IMG yang jumlahnya cuma berapa 15-20 orang, itu dilibatkan semua. Disitulah saya pertama kali bertemu beliau. Dan pada waktu perpisahan dengan Jansen juga, saya sempat bicara, tapi saya sama sekali tidak pernah dapat kuliah dari Brouwer. Prof. Brouwer itu mengajar tingkat 3-4, sedangkan saya kan baru 1-2 waktu itu. Tapi satu hal yang saya lihat dari Prof. Brouwer, kalau tadi ditanyakan mengenai kesan saya, satu hal yang saya bisa lihat dia, tapi saya ketahui sesudah saya bekerja sama dengan Prof. Brouwer tahun 75. Jadi tahun 75 saya mendirikan PPFK waktu itu dengan bantuan dari Belanda. Nah, Prof. Brouwer lah yang pertama menjadi advisor saya. Nah, di situ baru saya kenal baik dengan beliau. Tapi juga saya nggak lama karena saya sudah harus pergi ke Malaysia. Tapi di situ kesan saya sangat dalam terhadap Prof. Brouwer. Saya mendapatkan tulisan beliau tahun 75 pada waktu dia di PPFK di ITB sebagai advisor. Saya dapat tulisan dari beliau, bagus sekali tulisan itu, dan sekarang saya kira itu yang dipakai oleh teman-teman Geodesy untuk menulis sejarah. Pertama, Prof. Brouwer adalah orang yang visioner. Tahun 49 dia sudah mikir pada saat itu bahwa fotogrametri merupakan hari depan kita. Gitu ya. Itu betul-betul tahun 49 itu belum ada apa-apa itu mengenai fotogrametri, tapi dia sudah melihat. Jadi dari 4 poin yang dia ajukan sebagai alasan untuk mendirikan Geodesy adalah fotogrametri. Itu satu. Kedua, dia, kenapa saya katakan visioner, karena tahun 49 itu dia sudah mempunyai gambaran kebutuhan tenaga geodesi. Saat itu orang nggak tahu geodesi itu apa. Nah, disitulah dia katakan bahwa dalam poin 1 dari usulan dia, untuk tahun pertama kalau tidak salah itu paling tidak dibutuhkan 20 orang. 20 dari kadaster, kemudian kalau tidak salah 10 orang dari topografi. Dia pun sudah punya gambaran 10 tahun mendatang. Gitu ya. Jadi 10 tahun mendatang itu berapa kebutuhannya sehingga perlu didirikan Geodesy. Itu visionernya. Jadi pertama mengenai dia sudah melihat fotogrametri sejak lama, 49, dan sekarang betul-betul fotogrametri merupakan alat yang paling paling praktis lah untuk membuat pembuatan peta. Nah, kedua dia saya sebut dengan orang action, the man of action. Itu saya pelajari dari proses berdirinya Geodesy. Mungkin itu tidak pernah dibicarakan di teman-teman Geodesy. Sangat cepat reaksi dia. Dia satu-satunya orang Geodesy di ITB waktu itu, Fakultas Teknik waktu itu. Satu-satunya. Oke lah, ada Profesor Jansen yang sebelumnya jadi asisten dia, dan Van den Hout. Tapi dialah yang pegang peranan sebetulnya karena waktu itu dia yang guru besarnya di Fakultas Teknik itu. Nah, pada waktu dari pihak kadaster meminta tenaga-tenaga geodesi agar supaya dihasilkan oleh ITB, oleh Fakultas Teknik waktu itu, reaksi dia itu dalam waktu 1 bulan dia sudah mengajukan, sudah membentuk tim tim ad hoc-nya. Jadi komite, dia bikin komite bertiga, 1 dekannya, 1 guru besar dari arsitektur, 1 dia. Tapi motor penggeraknya adalah Prof. Brouwer. Jadi tidak sampai 1 bulan itu dia sudah bikin komite. Nah, kemudian kira-kira sebulan lebih sedikit gitu, sebulan sehari, dia sudah mengusulkan sesuatu. Jadi dalam waktu 2 bulan sejak permintaan dari kadaster dari Jakarta, dia di Bandung sudah mengusulkan sesuatu dalam waktu 2 bulan. Bayangkan waktu itu belum ada HP, belum semua pakai telegram, fax juga belum, telegram masih pakai telegram, teleponnya juga susah dulu, interlokal itu. Tapi dia bisa bergerak dengan cepat sekali, gitu ya. Nah, kemudian jadi usulan yang dia keluarkan itu hanya 2 bulan dari permintaan dari Jakarta untuk mendirikan geodesi dengan empat alasan tadi, gitu ya. Itu menurut saya luar biasa. Pada tahun 49 dia sudah cepat sekali bergerak gitu loh ya. Nah, kemudian akhirnya dari pemerintah Hindia Belanda waktu itu, bukan pemerintah Republik, sudah Republik gitu ya. Tahun 49 itu keluar ordonansi pendidikan tinggi. Salah satu isinya adalah revisi dari ordonansi pendidikan tinggi di mana geodesi dimasukkan dalam Fakultas Teknik. Itu ordonansi itu, semacam undang-undang itu ya. Itu tanggal 30 November tahun 49. Bayangin ya. Dalam waktu kurang ya sekitar dari April kali itu dia mulai Februari mulai usulan dari kadaster di Jakarta, November sudah keluar ordonansi tahun 49. Ya, sudah keluar ordonansi. Jadi undang-undang itu sudah untuk pendirian geodesi di Fakultas Teknik ya. Luar biasa menurut saya karena syaratnya banyak itu untuk mendirikan jurusan atau bagian waktu itu memang nggak sama dengan sekarang, tidak mudah, harus ada mahasiswanya, minimum 5 orang. Nah memang pada waktu tahun pertama, tahun kedua, hampir semua mahasiswanya, sampai tahun ketiga, tahun 50, tahun 51, 52 itu hampir semua ikatan dinas, kadaster, dan jawatan topografi, angkatan darat, hampir semua. Gitu ya. Tahun 53, mulai tidak disediakan lagi dari kadaster, ikatan dinas, tapi dari Pedanka. Nah, yang masuk cuma 4 orang kalau nggak salah, tahun 53. Waktu saya masuk 54 juga, yang masuk cuma 4 orang, jadi 3, yang 1 pindah, cuma 3 orang. Tahun berikutnya juga sedikit, akhirnya sampai tahun sekitar 63, itu mulai banyak, mulai berkembang. Saya kira itu di sejarah geodesi ada. Nah, disitulah saya lihat bahwa Prof. Brouwer itu melihat itu dengan jeli sekali. Saya katakan man of action. Nah, kenapa dia dikirim pada tahun 75 kembali kemari? Dia bukan orang ITC. Dia itu pensiunan, pensiun dan guru besar dari ITB sini. Dia dikirim kemari untuk membantu ITC Belanda, jadi advisor di PPFK. Nah, di situ saya kenal baik dengan dia. Dia orang sangat humble. Sebelumnya saya kan sebagai mahasiswa nggak begitu tahu. Tapi waktu tahun 75 itu saya kerjasama sama dia. Gitu ya. Ya ruangan kita bersebelahan gitu ya. Saya sebagai direktur PPFK yang saya mendirikan waktu itu, dan Prof. Brouwer yang advisornya. Dan cara berpikir dia persis seperti apa yang saya pikir. Itu yang saya senangnya. Jadi cocok udah gitu lah ya. Meskipun latar belakang saya dari Amerika, tapi cocok kita. Karena prinsipnya adalah kita akan melatih sebanyak mungkin tenaga-tenaga fotogrametri. Pikiran saya fotogrametri waktu itu.
Yang akhirnya cukup berkembang kan?
Dan memang itu yang akan datang. Karena misalnya penginderaan jauh kayak dengan satelit segala macam, itu semua dasarnya fotogrametri. Mau tidak mau, cuma teman-teman geografi yang lebih banyak memanfaatkan, orang geodesi agak trauma, agak kurang cepat tanggap gitu, bahwa fotogrametri itu sudah merambah bukan hanya foto udara, tapi juga citra satelit, bukan foto lagi. Jadi citra satelit gitu. Tapi dasarnya tetap itu optis gitulah. Bahwasanya kemudian berkembang dalam lainnya itu oke lah nanti. Satu hal lagi, Prof. Brouwer itu kelebihannya adalah pada waktu dia sebagai ketua departemen, waktu itu namanya ketua departemen ya, Geodesy, dia berhasil menempatkan peralatan fotogrametri yang paling canggih saat itu di Geodesy. Jadi gedung Geodesy baru, jadi bukan gedung ini sebelumnya kan itu gedung baru tahun 53 dibuat. Itu dia bisa bekerja sama dengan Jawatan Fotogrametri Sentral namanya. Jawatan Fotogrametri Sentral dengan peralatan yang super canggih, ahli-ahli dari Belanda menempatkan peralatan itu di Geodesy, di gedung Geodesy. Itu luar biasa, dan itu dipakai untuk praktikum fotogrametri angkatan-angkatan 50, 51, 52. Sesudah itu nggak ada lagi praktikum fotogrametri karena ada ketidakcocokan antara ketua departemen waktu itu, sesudah pengganti Johnson waktu itu. Jadi Brouwer diganti Johnson, Johnson diganti Prof. Sutomo. Ada ketidakcocokan, akhirnya alat itu dikeluarkan dari Geodesy. Besar, alatnya besar. Satu alat aja seperti ini, satu alat. Itu ada 3 atau 4 alat gitu ya. Itu dikeluarkan dan tidak ada satu orang pun dari Geodesy yang bisa praktikum fotogrametri. Tidak ada kuliah fotogrametri. Jadi saya lulus Geodesy tanpa fotogrametri. Dan itu